Hello, my name is Euan Youdale. I'm editor of Access International, and welcome to our first webinar of 2021, A New Generation in Product Design. New technologies in electric and hybrid powered equipment, telematics, operator aids, attachments and safety devices, for example, are all shaping the way products are being designed, both now and in the future. And much of those designs follows the growing expectations of rental companies and their customers in the modern era. So it's a big subject to cover for this webinar, and we'll try and cover as much ground as we can. Before we get started, I'd like to thank our sponsor, Teupan. We're very grateful for your support, so thank you. And as I said just now, that we've had a great number of registrations today, more than 500. So many thanks to everyone who signed up. And now I'd like to introduce our expert panel of speakers. Between them, they have decades of experience across the manufacturing and rental sectors. Firstly, we have Alexandre Saubot, and as the CEO of Haulotte, one of the world's largest access equipment manufacturers, he probably needs little introduction, only that Haulotte has 2,000 employees and a global presence, as you all know. Kai Schliephake, Managing Director of PartnerLift. PartnerLift is a Germany-based cooperative of rental companies with more than 100 members in the group and around 15,000 units between them. And Lance Sullivan, he's General Manager of US-based aerial platform manufacturer GMG. And he took on the role last year following a 35-year career with Sun State Equipment, which is one of the largest access equipment rental fleets in the world, and specifically the United States. So all of you are welcome to join in. If you have any questions, please use the question and answer box there at the bottom. You're welcome to chat between yourselves, but please don't use that to ask questions because I'll have an eye on the Q&A section. So as I said before, we're really going to be focusing on product design in this webinar. Market projections have been covered previously and will be covered again in future webinars. So we'll be looking at how the needs of rental companies are developing and changing and what the rental company of the future may look like, but specifically based really on products and how they're going to develop. So what does the modern machine in the modern rental fleet look like? What are the challenges of producing machines for maximum return on investment? So I'd like to ask the panel, what is their view on this as a general point before we start moving on to specific subjects? Are we looking at machines that don't need any on-location servicing, for example, replacing batteries? And can it all be done through diagnostics and remote maintenance? So how do you see things? Firstly, Lance, having been heavily involved in the rental industry in the US, what's your view?
Well, at Sun State, we did a large telematics deployment on our fleet, and we found a lot of benefits there. But in terms of what you're talking about, not having to handle a piece of equipment as much, we found that benefit obviously immediately with telematics and not having to call customers to try to get hours off of equipment when they might be running it for a single shift or triple shift. But we were able to gather that information. Aside from that, there's a lot to offer in terms of what telematics can do too. They can measure all kinds of things, access to a panel or whatever. I think you're always going to have a certain amount of service from a mechanical standpoint for your customers as a rental equipment company or provider. There's certain things that need to be greased. There's certain things that, engine oil will have to be changed, those kinds of things. As we go more into electric and hybrid technology, that's going to lessen quite a bit. And I think take that burden, the size that it is today, it's a tough thing to manage. And it's going to reduce it greatly because you're going to have all those electrical components and they're easy to monitor. Your data stream is easy to monitor and fault codes are easy to find. It's getting those interpreted to the operator that's probably the most important part so that they can say, hey, yeah, we've really got a problem. But yeah, I think it's going to help the workload in terms of what rental companies have to do to support equipment in the field.
Yeah, I see. And Alexander, what are you hearing from your customers as far as what their general expectations are?
Well, I think part of our work is, of course, to listen very carefully to all of our customers all around the world, and we can see a kind of a pressure on having the smartest possible machine. You get the pressure from the customer, you get the pressure from the total cost of ownership. And so we try to bring in your machine, I would say, some kind of very flexible information and data management to deal with every situation, because depending which country you are, depending the size of the country, the condition of work, if you're in the middle of a desert in Australia, honestly, having telematics is useful. But at the end of the day, if it's not working, it's the technician is 1,000 miles away and you have a big problem to deal with. So we have to offer a complete picture of information, and we have to make sure that whatever is the customer looking for, he can deal with it. So you start from the very beginning, which is to identify without sending a technician that the battery was not charged overnight or that the fuel tank is empty, as a very basic information, to, as Lance was mentioning, a very smart machine human interface to make sure that you get the most accurate information from the machine when there is any kind of troubleshooting. And so that you can, if you have something to do, either the guy in front of the machine is able to do it, or you will send a technician with the most accurate information and parts to be sure that you fix the problem at the very beginning. That was looking for any kind of difficulties the machine could face, mainly coming from condition of use. When you go to fleet management, you also have a lot of information about the status of the machine. Is it worth the machine is going back to the depot, or is it in a good condition enough to go straight to another location? If you're able to connect smart information on that, you can improve very heavily the logistics for the rental company. So we try to get as many information as we can. What could be the need? It's also location of the machine to allocate the job site that is the closest from the current place to reduce transport costs. It goes from also, is the machine only working 8 hours per day, or is it working 2 shifts, 3 shifts? Is the customer paying for that? So depending on the situation, condition of use, location, we try to offer the most flexible data management and database, and then to define with the customer what is he looking for, and to make sure that depending where he is, the type of problem he's facing, or the type of customer he's dealing with, he will be able to deal with his own constraints. And of course, we will permanently work on that to adjust, to make the information wider, smarter, to deal with the demand, because overall efficiency and total cost of ownership management are key for the success of our rental customers.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and Kai, what are you hearing from your members? What are their specific kind of points around that what they're looking for?
I think we have touched already the two main topics. One is telematic, and fully agree with what Alexandre said, because, and I believe at least in Germany, we have around 85–90% of our machines already switched to a telematic system. But there's another big issue we foresee in the near future, and I believe there is nearly no demand any longer for so many diesel machines. Most of this equipment can be equipped by electric power machines. And we can see this more and more. And a few years ago, it was a 20-meter machine. Now we have more 20-meter machines. We have 28-meter telescopic machines. And I believe our access industry is really one of the first industries which can completely shift. Because what we are doing with our machines, we are taking it down from the truck, then it rolls a few meters to the construction site, it's lifting up, and then it stands for 20 minutes, for 10 minutes, moves only 1 or 2 meters. It's not really active. And I believe this is a real big advantage for our industry to completely switch to electric machines. Because when you have a V-loader or something like this, he's really working all day.
Yeah.
But our access machines, I think they have a long time where they are not used or not moved, and this is excellent for electric machines.
Yeah, that's very interesting. You know, we're going to talk about all those subjects actually. But before we start on telematics and hybrid and electric, I just wanted to talk about the more standardized sort of machines that we see on you know, in the fleets. So what are the main areas as far as, you know, commonality of part, you know, what are the feeling about commonality of parts and things like that? What are you hearing as far as materials and the requirements for higher strength steel and things like that? You know, what areas are you focusing on in that at the moment? Alexander, you know, what are you hearing from your customers and looking to supply your customers in that area?
Well, when you look in detail, it's always a balance, because you have to balance between cost and commonality. And if you try to bring the biggest parts on everything, your machine gets more expensive. And at the end of the day, the customer is not willing to pay for performance he's not using 99 or 100% of the time. So you have to find a balance. And I think, of course, when you have a kind of a same range of product, you try to bring as much commonality as possible. But at the end of the day, when you look at parts, when you look at customer satisfaction or efficiency, the biggest subject is to deliver the right part on time. And the customer anyway will keep only the very fast rotation part and the easy beginning maintenance. But for all the rest, he's really counting on us to be able to deliver overnight 90 or 95% of the parts he needs. And honestly, when you have a big hangar with 10,000 reference, if you have 12,000, it's not making a big difference for the customer. It's the way you manage it and the way you deal with it. So efficiency of your process for me is way more important than parts communality, which is not meaning you don't look at it. But you know, when you manage a range from 6 meter scissors to 45, or even now some of our competitors having more than above 50 meters booms, parts communality is just not achievable. So your efficiency is much more linked to, are you doing properly the job? Are you coming to a job site with the right part? Are you shipping overnight the biggest and the right quantity your customer is looking for? That's much more important, honestly.
Yeah, I see. And Kai, you know, as far as, you know, parts concerned and that kind of area, would you also agree with that? Or what is your expectations from the manufacturers and the suppliers?
From a manufacturing point of view, I fully understand Alexandre's point. From a rental point of view, I would dream about to take a JLG joystick to put it on a Haulotte machine, Haulotte joystick, put it on a Genie machine. This really would help us a lot. From a manufacturer, I'm absolutely with Alexander, but from a rental point of view, we have so many different joysticks and switches and all this.
Yeah. If you can convince Jenny to use my joystick, that's fine.
Yeah, actually,
it's about switches as well. We have so many different switches, so many joysticks. If we can really harmonize this a little bit, that we can easily exchange or even have a common steering system or a common system where you use it, it will be much easier than we have it at the moment. Because everybody is doing his own, and you have old series and new series and next generation where again a lot of parts have switched. And this really is a mess at the moment.
Right, and so Lance, what's your experience of that, about being, you know, being able to get the right parts when you need it and supplying it as well, now that you're a manufacturer?
Well, you know, I think I agree with both my colleagues. You know, there's a perspective to that, right? Perspective from an OEM is, well, you know, we're getting this part and it does the job that we want. It's a quality part. From the rental standpoint, I couldn't agree more with Kai in terms of being able to have a commonality of components that's narrowed would be huge for the operators. Plus, it'd make marketing your machine a lot easier from the OEM standpoint. You know, my take on the whole thing is less parts. How about we eliminate more parts, right? We're always going to have the sensors and the switches that, we work with in terms of deploying, pothole protection or operator safety, or how high is the lift in the air so that we can control the machine better to operate safely within its envelope. But, really it's eliminating parts, as many as you can. And I think it's a bonus for not only the OEM, but also the rental companies. And when I used to review equipment that we would look to go out and purchase, is one of the big things that I would look for. Just like I said, is, commonality of components. Are they using this hydraulic system and this engine, and it fits within the window of product that we already have in the fleet, which makes it much easier to stock the important parts. To Alexandre's point of making sure that, you've got the right parts, so that when you do have to go out, you've got the right parts. It's not some oddball engine or oddball hydraulic system that you haven't handled before, and now you're totally off, or different hoses than what your hose maker can make in your service truck. And so it's a huge thing. And I think customers, I know I used to challenge a little bit in terms of if somebody had a real oddball make part, it immediately kind of causes a little bit of heartburn, because, just like I said, you're going to be trying to stock that one too, right? And so such diverse fleets that are out in the rental community, that's pretty tough to do, stocking all those parts. So
yeah.
And
yeah, thanks for that. And what about materials? Because we hear, there's lots about using high strength steels and more advanced materials in equipment. But is there a limit to what can be used, and what are the considerations around that when you're looking to design that into a product, or use a product that has that higher strength steel? It offers maybe higher capacities, but what are the challenges and dangers around that? Kai, what would you say?
We had last week a long discussion about a different material which we are looking always on. It was tires. And we were all thinking about why we are not delivering all machines with non-marking tires, full stop. Because we have so many different tires, black, gray, which marks a little bit, but meanwhile most of the tires, that's really an issue where we can speak about material. Why do we not switch most of the machines to non-marking tires? That would be my material remark.
Yeah, I see. And so, Alexander, what are you hearing from your customers as far as materials? And I mean, that could include tires, steel. What are the areas that you're looking at next, as far as trying to create the ideal piece of equipment?
Well, first to cover Kai's comment on tires or joystick, we try as much as we can, because we listen to that comment very often, to have non-marking tire on the biggest possible part of the range, or to have, at least for Haulotte, the same joystick, and to have a very limited number of control box with a quite similar product, so that we reduce the reference, because on that there is no question of sizing and so on. With always just one limit, which is the condition of use and the cost, which is on one stage today. The reality is that a marking tire is less expensive than a non-marking one. And so up to which point you are able to make the product on all the range, with customers who don't need a non-marking tire to accept to pay that price. But when you go to material, I would say it's a bit the same as the communality of parts. It's a balance between efficiency, which is, of course, you get the lighter part when you go to booms, when you go to baskets, where you want to reduce the weight for that, either to make the machine lighter or to have a bit more capacity on your basket. And on the other end is the reliability of the machine. Never forget that when you go about platform, you have a guy up in the air from 10 to 40 meters. And if anything's really bad happens to the material, it's normally a fatal accident that is at the end of that. So you need to build the experience curve, and you need to make sure that on all those subjects, innovation is not creating any risk, neither today nor in the next 15 years of the life of the machine. So you always have to find that balance. You always have to experience. And the last point, when you think about all these new materials for boom, is of course the cost. Is that today all what is not metal is really costing a fortune. So you always have to balance the benefit and the ability for our customer to pay for it. So we evaluate on a permanent basis the new technology, the new possibility. We have a prototype, we have long-term tests on all those elements. And at the end of the day, we try to present to our customer the best possible compromise on some subject, and we probably discuss that later on the hybrid or the electric machine.
Yeah.
We were able to provide a lot of innovation that we feel are making sense, reliable at an acceptable price. When you go to all these new material that could replace steel, we are dealing with that very carefully because the benefit is not obvious and the risk is clearly there.
Yeah, okay, yeah, absolutely. Well, we'll get onto that. And we just have one question here from the audience. Actually, I'll just ask Lance this, and he can take into consideration what's just been said as well. But the question is, do you think accessories, for example, the range of operator, basket accessories, and that kind of thing will become increasingly standard in newly acquired and bought equipment?
I really don't. There are some attachments that, you know, like a glazer kit or a tool tray or something like that, that can definitely get in your way when you're operating a piece of equipment like that. There are some accessories that I'd like to see become standard, like overhead warning systems or protection systems. But, you know, all in all, I think the way that the platforms are set up on most access equipment, you're getting into areas where you're not going to want that stuff if you're not absolutely needing it or using it. So I'm not sure a lot of that will become standardized, like cup holders in cars.
Sure.
I can see where there's some things that that could become standard that are keeping up with our modern era, like a way to charge your cell phone when you're 19 feet in the air. Gee, that'd be nice. And so, you know, I think the industry will kind of move into that. And if they're listening to the customer, as my colleague said, then I think, you know, you're going to adopt those types of things as standard within the platform and the operating envelope that the operator has.
Yeah, I see. Okay. Yeah, thanks for that.
And on the steel, on the high strength steel question, I'll just say this. There's applications for it, and then there's not applications for it. If I've learned anything in my experience, is that high strength steel applied in the wrong places fails over time because it's too brittle. But if it's got the right combination of high strength steel and mild steel, then you have wear characteristics and frame life characteristics that outlast, say, a piece of equipment just built with one or the other. So.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, thank you. Right, now we're going to move on to engines, and of course that will then move on to electric and hybrid. But of course, at the moment, there's still, you know, there's all this conversation about moving on to electric, moving on to hybrid. But of course, still there are many diesel machines being used around the world, and a majority of which are. So what are the current challenges in the different emission regulations and other challenges around producing a diesel-powered piece of equipment these days? So, Alexander, as a manufacturer, what are the main challenges in that area and the opportunities?
Well, the first thing I'd like to mention is that about 5 years ago, we make a strategic choice, which is any new product we put on the market will be electric or will be environmental friendly whatsoever, which is a pretty strong constraint, because we get to the point that when you see the evolution of the environment, low emission zone, zero emission zone, and we talk to customer, the idea to have to manage two equipment for the same reference, depending if you go into a low emission zone or into a non-low emission zone, is of course making their life more complicated. And so we dedicate a lot of resources to build a machine that will respect that environmental constraints, but with no change for the customer, which means the same drivability, the same performance on rough terrain. Because on the other end, of course, the machine are most of the time sitting with a guy working up in the air, but when you're in the mud, you know that the level of energy you need to cross a muddy place is very high. And so we redesign all the machines to try to deal with that constraints, try to reduce as much as we can any function that is using energy. Because when you think about the way we are designing the machine before, you put a reasonably big engine and the energy consumption was not a subject, to make it short, for the reason that Kai described very well. And all of a sudden, you have to rethink the machine, which is every penny of electricity you use for nothing may reduce the autonomy of your machine and may create the condition of a machine not working at the end of until the end of the day. So we put a lot of analysis and a lot of effort to improve the battery management, to get the machine going down just with gravity and all those elements to deal with that. And so we had basically to rethink all the products, even if it looks pretty similar, to achieve the performance required by the customer, which is, I'm happy to have a green machine, but if it's stopped by noon, I will not be very happy. I will not be happy very long.
Yeah.
So, and it, as always, it's finding the right balance between weight, quantity of energy, energy management efficiency, condition of use that will make the success. And honestly, the first range of Pulseo machine that Haulotte put on the market was in that pretty successful.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And you know, yours is the Pulseo range, isn't it? That you've just introduced rough terrain scissors in. How do you see the future of that range panning out? Any more launches in the near future for on the rough terrain boom side?
Yeah, for sure. We'll continue. We start with the 20 meter. We'll go with the 16, and then probably we'll go for a higher machine to try to cover the main application, just to deal with the customer requirement. Because my feeling is that at one stage, even the rental company will not always know if the machine will go in a zero emission zone or not. And so if you can secure the machine is zero emission just by turning a small key and making sure there is no emission, that's very easy. If you have to ship a machine and then find out it's not the right model, take it back and send another one. I mean, we always try to make the life of a customer easier. And I think in that environment, having a machine that will do everything on its own, and that getting on the job site, if it's outside rough terrain with the possible emission, while the machine is working like the old style, and as soon as you're in a low or zero emission zone, you get to the point where you just turn off the energy refill, and you have your machine working full electric. And we also even working on machine where you don't need to have the engine on it, so it will work as a full electric, and you just plug it at night as any small electric scissors.
Sure.
So we try to cover all the feedback we get from the customer, various condition of use, and bring more knowledge to offer the right product. But it will be a permanent learning. Having one machine, two machines, three models on the field, we'll get the feedback on what needs to be improved to have the next machine even better than the existing one.
Yeah, yeah, thank you. And Lance, you know, what's your experience from? I mean, now you know, how do you see the relationship between diesel and electric, and the kind of equipment you're going to be producing in the future, and the kind of expectations you had previously at the rental company?
Well, I'm actually excited being on the manufacturing side of it because of the landscape I see and the opportunity that I see. I think that the field is wide open for us. I mean, we know we can run semis down the road, you know, electrically. And so I think the time is now. It's obviously there's an opportunity for us to continue to grow hybrid and electric equipment in the fleets. They're a little more difficult to produce. They're a little more expensive, obviously, as everybody knows. But the overall net gain on the back end from ROI on OEC is that you're not replacing engines, you're not replacing stuff like that. That really some of this stuff is contactless, with the exception of a bearing at each end. And so your wear is going to go down overall. Your machine life is going to go up. We saw that with the implementation of Tier 4 and Tier 5 in Europe, where, you know, it's so much cleaner, so much tighter and everything else. And well, you know, fuel has its place in certain applications where that's necessary, or even in regenerating electric hybrid machine. But running that for a shorter period of time as possible is really the right thing to do for our environment. And I think there's a lot of companies that are working in that end, and a lot of customers are working that way too, especially when they can go out and remarket that machine as something that will save customers a ton of money on fuel. You know, you think about on the rental standpoint, overtime charges, and, you know, some customers will fight you over it or whatever, or there's a miscommunication about it or whatever. But the customer won't run out of fuel. If the system is designed properly, they'll make it not only a day, but more than a day. And in certain applications that are remote, I think Kai brought this up, where you're not sending somebody, you know, 1,000 miles to go fix a problem. If you've got the right diagnostics on the machine, there's not a whole lot, you know, mechanically in terms of what there is with a combustion engine. There's not as much to go wrong. So I think the overall experience from both the rental operator and the customer is going to be a lot better as time goes on.
Yeah, yeah. And Kai, what are you hearing from your members as far as, one of the questions from the audience is, what are the implications of keeping hybrid in a fleet? I suppose along the lines of, you know, the choices that your members will make in the future as far as whether they will choose hybrid or electric, and what the realities are now.
I think we can see two different hybrid systems at the moment. The one is really where you have an electric driven system and a diesel driven system, and some systems you are switching from A to B. I believe this is a bridge technology we will not see in 5 or 10 years any longer. If we speak about hybrid, my understanding is that we really have an electric drive system, and we have just a small generator on board to charge the batteries. We have one big advantage regarding diesel engines. We all have the issue that in our machines, the engines are never run up to 100%. They're on a slow mode base, where you produce a lot of emissions and a lot of catalysts are not working. And to be honest, I believe electric drive system with a small generator on board to charge the battery, that would be the future. And one further step, what we are thinking all the time, we have these huge counterweights on so many machines. And on the other hand, we need all these lead batteries, which are really heavy as well. I always think, how can we better replace some counterweights, some batteries, and then there's no need for any diesel engines any longer. It's a challenge, I know, but I think this is a system for the future, or the concept, that we don't have counterweights and batteries. Let's use the batteries as counterweights. And there are a lot of machines already in the market which exactly uses this. And that's the future from my point of view.
Yeah, interesting solution. And actually, just while we're at it, we have somebody from the audience has asked, Alexander, you said that you'll only design all electric, eco-friendly and non-polluting machines in the future. How has this been received by the industry?
Well, so far, I think we had a very good return from our customer. As Kai was mentioned, I think the hybrid that is switching from one to the other is not a long-term solution, because we have to be able to be zero emission, and that kind of technology is not answering that concern. So we make the clear choice, which is in line with what just Kai said, which is, if the customer wants it, the machine are able to operate full electric for 1 day, and therefore you secure the situation linked to environment, whatever the place of the machine is. So that's the choice we made. It's a very demanding one. When you go to rough terrain machine, it's a very demanding one, but we had a very good return. And also we moved to the idea, as mentioned, that if we have a diesel engine, it's a small one to recharge the battery. And when the technology is there, it will be very easy just to replace it by a fuel cell. And therefore guarantee whatever you work for it, that you have zero emission of carbon dioxide. So I don't know when the point will be there, and when the technology and the price will be good enough. with, of course, all the subject of hydrogen recharge and where you can refill your fuel cell and all that. But all the design of a machine is meant to the idea that one day there will be for sure no more diesel engine on any of our machines. I don't know if it's 3 years, 5 years, or 10 years from now, because the technology will continue to evolve, but that's the clear direction we have taken, and honestly, the feedback from the customer so far are very good.
I see. Yeah, good. And just to move the subject on and speak to Lance about the options of batteries. Really, I mean, obviously, lithium is the talking point in the industry at the moment. But what about the choice between lithium and lead acid? What are the advantages and disadvantages of both, from your view now as a manufacturer?
Well, I think lithium is still technology that needs to be closely watched and regulated in terms of heat management. You know, the batteries last a long time. They develop memory like any other battery. I think AGM batteries are the way to go. Years ago, it wasn't the way to go, simply because the batteries were great when you wanted to power back up a computer system with them, but when you actually wanted to put them in a vibration environment, they didn't hold up real well. But that's been overcome. And AGM, you don't have to service them. You know, there's no pouring water into them and water gassing out and components that get corroded or anything like that. So that's certainly good technology. I think lithium ion is definitely the shape of the future, if you will, in terms of storage. As that continues, the technology improves on how much they can store and how long they can store it. So I think that's going to come into play. I think if you're looking at equipment right now, you're probably going to want to look at AGMs, and obviously in the future, it's as it becomes available. And price is another thing with lithium ion. It's a lot more expensive, and so you've got to kind of temper that with, you know, what's the battery life compared to what's my ROI, and that's going to be a real balancing act. And I'm not really sure anybody has a clear picture into that right now, especially as it applies to equipment beyond an electric drill. So
sure, yeah, and actually the counterweight suggestion from Kai has caught some of our viewers' imaginations here. Kai, one of the questions is: are your customers ready to pay the higher price for a battery replacing the steel counterweight?
Okay, we go ahead with the old lead batteries, and then we will pay the price instead of the higher low maintenance batteries. Yes, because I believe the old batteries are not too bad for rental companies, because at least once every 4 weeks, one of our technicians is looking after the machine when it's long on the construction site. And if you stay let's say once a month with your machine only for 15 minutes to have a short service spec, you can lick on the water, you can refill, and then you are done. If the machine sticks for months without you can do anything, I'm fully on this new battery technology, but at the moment I would really stick on the old battery type we have. Sure. That can pay out the extra cost instead of moving the old batteries to the counterweight and not using new battery types.
Yeah, absolutely. And what's your view on that, Alexander?
Well, as mentioned, it's always the balance. As you mentioned, the price per kilo of a battery is not exactly the same as a counterweight. So where is the real payback? And I'm the first one to be happy to replace counterweight by battery. But if my machine is 50% more expensive than any other one, and that no customer is willing to pay for that because the benefit of on his side is not enough, I won't sell a lot. So I think we have room, because as Kai explained very well, we always have a subject of weight and balancing. And I think we have space to move the things around. And depending on the technology, the condition of use, we will have to find the right balance between autonomy, new technology, cost, and ability from our customer to get a payback for that. And we are permanently discussing with our customer, testing the market, testing the technological solution to be sure we will be at the best possible point to deal with customer requests. That's the way we manage our product development, discussion with our customer, and the good relationship we have established for more than 30 years now. Just try to be sure that if there is a good idea, it has to be affordable in terms of all the value chain. And sometimes I have a few good ideas that I was never able to implement because no one was willing to pay for that. But maybe in 5 years, with the environment is changing, technology is changing. When we talk about battery, we talk about the new technology linked to solid batteries, which may solve some of the issues we have to deal with now. You will see that automotive industry is working a lot on batteries, and also we may learn from them and from their experience. At one stage, we will be able to onboard on our machine some of those technology with great benefits and decent prices. So monitoring the market and the technology and making sure we provide the best answer to carry on all his customer requests is the guideline. And hopefully we try to be, we are more often good than not good.
Yeah, of course. And there's another question here. It doesn't connect directly to product design, but it's a question about charging on site. You know, the idea that 400 volt charging is necessary from a working height of 20 meters, but that is not possible everywhere on construction sites without problems. I mean, Lance, what's your general view on that? So obviously the meters is probably a reference to European sites, but what's your general view on that situation?
As far as charging batteries goes? On
sites, yeah.
It's been a challenge. I think anybody who's been in the rental industry or construction industry can tell you that one of the biggest problems that we have is unauthorized use. And by that, I mean that it's one contractor works their day, they're the primary renter of the equipment, their crew plugs their machine in, everybody goes home. Here comes the next crew, they just unplug the machines and use them, or they'll unplug the first crew's machines to plug in their machines. It's an ongoing battle, it seems like, but there's some things Telematics can do with that in terms of monitoring for unauthorized use, which is good to help stop it. As far as charging on job sites, no, power is not always available. And one of the other things that most companies have at their disposal is the ability to set up temporary power in terms of generators and distribution boxes to allow customers the ability to charge not just one machine, but multiple machines. You know, commonly jobs can have, 10, 20, 50 scissor lifts on them, as some of these huge jobs do. And to power all those machines, you may not have enough sockets in the building, if you will, that are available at the right level for people to charge. So generators are a good source to be able to do that with. And you don't need a real big one. But to Kai's point, you do need to keep it under load because the new engines wet stack quite a bit if you don't have at least 35% load on them. So. Yeah,
I see. And to move the question on a little bit about batteries and then potential future options. I know, Kai, when I spoke to you before, you've got a view on, I mean, lithium seems to be the journey that people are going on at the moment, but what's your view about lithium and the future of it? And, are there potential other solutions?
Yeah, I believe at the moment we are at the beginning of a battery journey, which is really very much driven by electric cars at the moment. But I'm sure there are so many metal components from cathode to anode where we are not thinking about today, because the lithium batteries, from my point of view, they have a very high energy density. Coming back to my point with the counterweights or whatever, the weight in general, there's no need for us to have really the high density of lithium batteries. Could be other battery pairs, new battery techniques, which fits much better to our industry than where we are at the moment. But I believe that we are just now at the beginning of a long journey, and we will see new battery types in a few years where we will find our best battery. I'm not sure that we have already found the best battery package at the moment.
Yeah,
and coming back to Alexandre's, yes, it's a question of costs at the moment, but we will see where it's going. But I'm sure we will see new alternatives very, very, very near.
And Alexandre, what's your view on the alternatives, and what about hydrogen and things like that? You know, what are the options on the market? Where do you see it? Because your Pulsio range at the moment, they use lead acid. Is that correct?
Yeah, and we're working on lithium-ion battery also for the future, but with a good concern that Jessica expressed. I think at the end of the day, I fully agree with what was just said. We are at the beginning of a journey. And you mentioned hydrogen, but today we produce hydrogen, but it's carbon dioxide with a lot of carbon dioxide emission. We have gray hydrogen. And so it's like using an electric car in India, when electricity is made 66% with coal electricity power plant. Where is the benefit? It's zero. So at the end of the day, if the real target is to reduce carbon dioxide emission, you have to look at the whole chain. And so we were just a small player along that chain. And I think as a manufacturer, my concern is that the design of my machine for the future is smart enough to deal with any technological breakthrough. So if tomorrow we can replace the small diesel engine that is recharging the battery by a fuel cell, that's fine. If the technology in 15 years is once again something different, but we just replace that energy reserve by the new one that is dealing with the environment-friendly request that our customer and the world is asking for. You mentioned about no electricity on sub-job site, but if you have a compressor, an electric generator, it usually provides a bit of carbon dioxide in the current environment. So having your own engine on the machine that is doing the job, or plugging your machine into a diesel generator is not making a lot of difference for the environment, to be honest. So our philosophy is really that one. We see where the world is heading, and we have a strong request from customer and the customer of our customer to secure no emission from the machine. And we want to make sure that the design, the process is able to deal with this request today, tomorrow, and in the long-term future. So it will be very easy to replace a small energy production when the technology change. And that's basically on that we're working on. Batteries, we adjust the side on the energy and the weight and the cost, a complete electric organization, and we put the small energy recharge depending on where the machine is working, where the technology is taking us. And hopefully we have a long-term solution, and we keep customer happy even when the technology is changing. I know that when we change joystick, they are not that happy, but hopefully when we change that, they will be.
Okay, good. Actually, time is moving on quite quickly. Should we move on to telematics now? How does the integration into the machine of telematics, you know, how's that going to occur in the future as far as, you know, it being a fully integrated thing when manufactured, Lance? You know, how do you see the telematics future?
I see it monitoring a host of things. I'm sure people are commonly aware of location and those kinds of things, but it's really about data coming from the machine, whether it be, you know, a warning to an operator or something that needs to be serviced or whatever. But the way I see the future of telematics, as long as the device has any kind of counter in it, and they do for hours and stuff like that, but to be able to record the deltas of data that change within the machine's operation, to take those, feed them into a back-end system, push them through an algorithm and be able to give feedback that's meaningful, to tell me that a machine is hot and I'm 150 miles away, doesn't really do anybody any good, except maybe I could call up and say your machine's overheating, maybe it's not being operated properly. but gee, wouldn't it be better if I had a way to say, okay, you're overloading the machine the way you're driving it, or the way that you're loading the loader bucket, or maybe you're trying to override something and lift too much, or whatever it may be, that you give those critical warnings in terms of, hey, you know, this is the overload and this is why, or here's something that you could use to say, enhance your efficiency from an operator standpoint, where, or even from a rental operator to a customer, to be able to hand them a report that says, hey, you know what, this algorithm says that, you know, based on the way the machine's being operated, the operator could use a little more training to operate the machine more efficiently or safely, or whatever components you want to monitor. The sky's the limit. The problem with telematics is that if you try to look at all that data coming across, it's data overload. And it's difficult with people that have large rental fleets or even medium-sized fleets to stay on top of all those warnings, right? You know, instead, I think the right way for telematics is to implement those kinds of algorithms on the back end that give meaningful information to users in terms of how the machine's operated. That also has a benefit on the manufacturing side, because you can review data points, you know, all day long. And so the more things that you're measuring, the more, you know, algorithms or cross points that you can create to be able to design machines more efficiently, to use less energy, or whatever it may be. So I think there's a bright future for telematics, and it can be integrated in pretty much every facet of a machine, where you've got data, as long as you create the right interface with whatever that data is. And so I think it's got a real bright future, as long as it's applied that way.
Yeah, absolutely. And Kai, there's a question here for the audience. I thought I'd just place this one with you. What about looking at the virtual job site and BIM? Is there a request from your members to have machine data and progress of work included in the monitoring of the job site?
Yeah, I think there is a huge demand on all these data, but at the moment we are really struggling with all these BIM technologies, because it's a nice try, but it doesn't reflect really the situation on the construction side. We have it very, very open that we have so many changes in construction, and finally a guy on site, he has to take the decisions. I know there will be a future for BIM, but I can't see it at the moment for a standard construction site. Another item would be that our demand is that we have retrofitted most of our machines with telematic systems. And this retrofitting has always a problem, something which you fix after it was installed, after it was delivered by the manufacturer. You can take it away as well. And my wish would be to have on all machines an integrated telematic system, which you can easily disassemble, like we can do it with all these retrofitted things at the moment. And if we have it for all machines, it will make our lives much easier as well. And it costs a lot of time to fit it, to cable it, to fix it somewhere, to make sure connection is there. I think it's a small point which can be easily managed by the manufacturer, because manufacturer and rentals, they have a common interest in it. The manufacturers during the first 2 years of warranty can easily check what is the issue. The first fix rate, where you can really fix your problem on the machine, can be immediately increased. And the rental company wants to know some basics as well. Therefore, manufacturer and rental companies have a high interest to get a good telematic system which is integrated in the machines.
Yeah, thank you. And there's a question here for Alexander. Haulotte has just released My Haulotte as being an in-house solution, telematics system. Previously, you had a third-party provider. Is that correct? Why did you move to an in-house situation?
Well, we had a third party because it was something on the shelf that some of our customers were using, and we just make sure we could offer to a customer what they were looking for. And we move one step forward, where we try to have a global offer in terms of data management. As it was mentioned before, we still have no idea of the use of all those data and which one will be used in which condition for which type of application. We have to define with our customer if we do the job for them, if they just want to have a pile of data and they implement in their own system on their side. So we decide that we build our own system. But the idea is that this system gives us the ability to give the customer any service they want, depending on what they are looking for, the level of integration, the level of outsourcing they are willing to do, and what they want us to do for them. And on the other end, with this portal and with this, I would say, EDI system, we are just able to provide them the data, their own system at the right format. So the idea is to be as flexible as possible, because when you go to digital and all those subjects, honestly, I think none of us has a clear idea of what we can do with that. And we will learn one day after another from the good application we have, from some specific requests. As mentioned, one day we have a digital job site, but before the digital job site, we just have the digital machine, and we don't need anymore to send a technician. We have a technician with 3D glasses that will guide exactly the same operator in front of the machine, and he will guide him to repair, because we have all the information, and we can repair the machine without sending a guy. Why not one day is that achievable? What are the links data we need to achieve that? I have honestly no clue how far this will bring us. And I just want to be sure that I can cover any change, any demand, any breakthrough from the technology on that one too. And my portal, my Haulotte portal, is the idea to have this unified front office for our customer, and behind that, we want to be able to do anything they want, or anything the technology today or tomorrow allow us to do.
Okay, well, thank you for that. And we're actually getting very close to the end of the time here, but I thought I'd ask one more question along the lines of very large boom lifts. We've seen a couple last year launched in the 210-foot range and slightly higher. So what's your view about the future of these very large booms, and what are their advantages and disadvantages? Kai, what would you say?
I think at least mid-Europe is very much dominated by track-mounted machines. And if you look at the pricing of the track-mounted, and if you look on the pricing of the big boom, you can see there is somewhere a front line where you can't go any higher. But I'm still convinced there is some room for bigger booms. But I guess a lot of track-mounted machines can be used as well. It's more or less a competition between what can you do with self-propelled and what you can do with track-mounted, and what's the price about it.
Yeah, I see. And Lance, what would be your view? Lance, we can't hear you actually. Your sound's gone. So Alexandre, I'll ask you the same question.
Well, I think as Kai just well mentioned, the question is the balance. You know, a self-propelled machine is a self-propelled machine. When it's too heavy, when it's too wide, you get no more benefits of being self-propelled. And then, of course, the truck-mounted is normally it's a much better way to deal with some very high application. So where is the limit? Today, it's somewhere between 45 and 55 meters that we see the switch from AWP to truck-mounted. Maybe the technology one day change that limit one way or another. But my feeling is that the bulk of the market is between 15 and 35 meters, and that's what we're currently covering.
Okay, thank you. And Lance, if your sound is back up, what's your view on those very large boom lifts?
I agree with the others have said. That there's a limitation in terms of being able to handle a machine that big and the height that you can currently go today. Maybe down the road we see some technologies in terms of you know, structurally how to support that, but I'm not sure I would see those larger machines coming off of trucks anytime soon, because there's just no way to move them around.
Sorry, I was paused then. Okay, well, great. We've come to the end of our time, unfortunately, but it's been a fascinating discussion, and I think we could have carried on. There's quite a few more questions to ask, but unfortunately, we've come to the end of our hour. So thank you very much to our panel for taking part. It's been a really interesting hour. So, and also, I'd also like to thank, of course, our sponsor, Teupen. Many thanks again for your support. That's been fantastic. And I'd just like to say that a recording of this webinar will be available. You'll receive an email about it, and it'll also be available on the Access International website. And of course, we plan to bring more Access industry webinars to you in the future, so look out for those. And we will also, just leaves me to say, thank you very much again to our audience, and thank you for watching and sending in your questions. And I hope the rest of your week goes very well. And so thanks again to our panel, and goodbye and good evening.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.